So now we're fast forwarding to you stepping out on a limb to start your third business, and this one being VinoVest in the vino space, in the wine space. And early on, so I believe I was amongst your first investors in your seed round when I first learned about you and heard your story and was totally impressed and blown away and knew that I wanted to be part of this because, number one, I believe in investing in uncorrelated assets, which we can get into. And number two, I love the element of scarcity inside of those investments. So anytime you have a limited supply, that often is going to influence demand. And then when that asset class is uncorrelated to the stock market, it gives a nice hedge as an overall piece of the portfolio. And so I saw this as a great play for me as an investor where I could invest in the company at the beginning. So that's more of the high risk investment, which for me personally, I really only do seed level investments and early stage investments from cash flow that happens through asset ownership. So I decided the riskier type of investment for me was going to be done with just a monthly distribution of cash. So that way, if it didn't go well, I wasn't eliminating the principal. I had already invested that into an asset. But then from there, I was able to take capital and invest it into unique wines and unique labels, vintages from all across the world. Even though you guys are pretty selective on just the handful of chateaus and wineries, tenutas, depending on what part of the country you're in, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start, and in why even start VinoVest, right? I've been in crypto, and wine is probably the furthest thing from crypto if you think about it, right? One thing is less than 10 years old, the other has been consumed and enjoyed since maybe even 8,000 years ago, right? And the way that people make wine really hasn't changed since then. And I think what really united and connected the dots for me and made Brent and I want to take the leap was exactly to your point, the scarcity element, right? It's something that you can only, from a vineyard, right? Only maybe make 100,000 bottles from this plot of land. Every single year, as somebody cracks open a bottle, enjoys it with their family, there's just one less and one less, right? And that makes the remaining supply that much more scarce, which pushes the prices up. And then there's also the maturation, the bottle factor, right? That's kind of the X factor in which wine actually changes over time. It doesn't really matter if a Bitcoin is just mined off the block or 10 years old. The Genesis, Bitcoin, right? That's still fungible and the same. Wine appreciates, and people do tend to put a premium on older wine. So with those two factors, just from an economics principle, it made a lot of sense to me. And I wanted to be able to get access to it, but looking at the existing options out there, I wasn't able to find an intuitive and tech-friendly way to be able to efficiently deploy capital. And just with what's inside me, I was like, all right, well, if there's nothing good out there, let's build it ourselves. And that's why VinoVest exists.
Oh, it's so cool. And so basically what you did is you said, all right, we've got this uncorrelated asset class in wine. And again, just for clarity's sake, because I talk a lot about, in the Lifestyle Investor Mastermind, one of the things we always talk about is asset allocation. And what do the billionaires do? What do the centimillionaires do? What do the wealthiest people in the world do to protect their portfolio? And one of the commonalities across the board, if you look at research from family offices, if you look at it from multifamily offices, single family offices, high net worth individuals, you will see that there are hedges in the overall portfolio. So unlike most people, most Americans specifically, who invest, they put the vast majority of their money in the stock market. Mm-hmm. The wealthiest people in the world put only about a quarter of their net worth in the stock market. So they got about 25%, and everything else goes in other areas. It might be real estate, might be private equity, might be fixed income, might be cash equivalents. But then you start getting into, some of the hedge funds, some private credit, and then you start getting into, for some people, it's currency. For some people, it's infrastructure. For some people, it's you can even delineate down on that private equity side into VC. But we can break it all the way down into other uncorrelated asset classes. So some people really like art. Some people like artifacts and historical documents. Some people like cars and watches. So all these different things in the collectibles. And so wine falls in there. And we should also mention bourbon, because this is a new thing that now the platform VinoVest has availability on. And I'm proud to say that I've invested in a bourbon barrel with you guys. We can get into the specifics there, but
Yeah.
I just love looking at an overall asset allocation that has a little bit of everything. It has, we didn't talk about, commodities, but like all these different aspects. And some of these, and we didn't mention crypto, right? But like some of these family offices have a 0.5% or 1% in some of these areas, to the point that they're not putting all of their assets there, but they're putting some of it because it's a smart way to win when the stock market, for example, is losing.
Absolutely. I think, to your point, right, looking at what the wealthiest do, it's really a larger concentration to alternatives than what the 60-40 stock portfolio, bond portfolio is suggesting, right? And I think if you look at the billionaires and centimillions in the world, how many of them do you think own a wine cellar? How many of them do you think have a whiskey collection, right? Almost all of them, I'd be venturing to say. And I think
even if they don't consume it because
Yeah.
it's a good investment, I think a lot of them consume, for me, like I like to, my goal is that I make money on wine and I can drink for free, and same thing with bourbon, right? But there are other people that they don't even consume it. They're doing it strictly for investment sake.
Yeah, and that's the secret that people don't tell you, right? Someone could have a massive 10,000 bottle cellar and you think they're going to drink it all, but there's no way one person can drink 10,000 bottles. The majority of that is for investment. Majority of that is to actually trade. So to your point, their profits off of those trades can offset the consumption part of their lifestyle, right? So there is this sort of cool lifestyle component to it that is really undeniable with, wine, scotch, bourbon, right? And we also are able to kind of tap into that with VinoVest.